Okay, that's a fascinating question. And the answer is you should not leave her. Let me just quickly then run through what I think the biblical view on divorce is. Jesus was asked that very question. Moses, they said to Jesus in Matthew, said that we could have a divorce for some reason given us in Deuteronomy 24, which isn't entirely clear. It doesn't matter. He said to them in verse 8, Moses indeed permitted you to divorce your wives and to give her a divorce paper. But Moses permitted this divorce, whatever it was, the reason for it, because of the hardness of your hearts. But it was not like that from the beginning. Please note that Jesus overrides Moses on this point. And so I tell you, verse 9, now I'm going to tell you what I think Jesus says. If you divorce your wife except for sexual immorality, breaking the marriage sexually and unforgiven and unrepentant, repeated, then that person is committing adultery, at which point then you would have a valid divorce. A legal divorce is given for one reason only by Jesus, and that is a permanent, unstopped, and unrepented breaking of the sexual bond of marriage. Jesus gives that as a valid reason for a valid divorce. He didn't say, well, if your wife argues with you about the faith, that gives you a right to divorce. It does not. Now, Paul added another reason. He knew about the one that I just gave you from Matthew and Jesus. Paul then said over there in Corinthians that if you have two believers, and should they, heaven forbid, separate for some reason, let them not get married to somebody else, but rather get reconciled. So if you have two believers, then reconciliation is the first option. But if you have an unbelieving mate, you are not free to cancel that marriage unless that unbelieving person leaves. In other words, you are not to leave her. She, as an unbelieving person, might leave you, in which case I think Paul said you're not bound, meaning I think that you'd be free to remarry. But you certainly cannot contemplate divorce for a single moment on the basis of friction over the faith. You have to work that out and look for reconciliation, of course. But no, I would say that divorce is out of the question as far as Jesus and Paul are concerned. There being only one valid reason in Jesus, that's to say, breaking the sexual bond. And the only other reason, as given in Paul, would be where the unbelieving partner decides to leave you. Then I think you wouldn't be bound any longer. I hope that's clear. That's more or less what most evangelicals would say. And I think that's probably the least difficult of those various arguments.
We must stress, Anthony, that if there is abuse going on in the marriage, obviously we are not saying that the spouse, male or female, by the way, should just like tough it out, as they say.
No.
Especially if there's physical abuse. Yeah, I think we need to stress that because people might misconstrue. So
yeah, but the first attempt is to get counseling and reconciliation. But if the unbelieving person then leaves flat out, then certainly that bond is broken. But you're right to add that third.
And if it is a Christian marriage, self-professing Christians, and one acts in a very, unchristian way, obviously the situation has changed. In other words, the self-professing Christian, you can call yourself a Christian, but if you're not loving your spouse, your own flesh, then obviously you're acting in a very unchristian manner.
That's right.
And you should follow the scriptures regarding that, as you say in 1 Corinthians 7, where Paul lays out the rule book, as it were, for a so-called mixed marriage. So
that's right.